helping people cope with and overcome life's challenges. This is Life Transformation with Michael Hart, award-winning psychotherapist, author, and Canadian certified counselor.
Thank you for joining us on the Life Transformation Show. I'm your co-host, Denise Hart, and today we will be discussing the topic, the power of Thanksgiving. Yes, it is this time of the year again when we gather with family and friends to celebrate Thanksgiving. And we are going to shed a whole new light on Thanksgiving as we discuss the power of Thanksgiving. If you're new to Elim, you can find out more about us at ElimCounselingMinistry.com or by calling 613-699-1677. Yes, we are located in Ottawa, Canada, but provide international services as well. And joining me today to discuss this topic is my favorite psychotherapist and author, Michael Hart.
Well, I certainly hope I'm your favorite psychotherapist. Thank you, Denise. I think this is one of those days when we both have a lot to be thankful for. Yes, for so many things, for life, for family, for friends, but also for being able to bring our listeners another timely episode.
Absolutely, Michael. Well, we're talking about something close to my heart, the power of Thanksgiving, and not just the turkey and the gravy kind, but the kind that transforms hearts and minds. So you once mentioned that in the book of Leviticus, there was an offering that symbolized gratitude.
That's such a good question, Denise. In Leviticus, there were two offerings that had the element of thanksgiving attached to it. The first is the grain offering found in Leviticus 2, but then there is another offering that's called the peace offering that's found in Leviticus chapter 7, chapter 3 verses in chapter 3 and also mentioned in chapter 7 verse 11 to 21. And the peace offering had an element of thanksgiving to it. It was an offering that was offered to show gratitude to God for the blessings that he had given the people. So in this sacrifice, it is as if the whole community that came together, the friends and family of the person who was offering the sacrifice, they were saying that everything that they had was a result of God's blessing. The harvest, every loaf of bread, every blessing, they were acknowledging that these blessings came from the hand of God. So in many ways, this was an act of drawing attention to the source of everything that they have. And so there's a big difference here between the peace offering and sin offering, because a lot of times we tend to think of the sacrifices of the Old Testament as if they're all about sacrifices for sin. But the peace offering particularly was about offering thanksgiving to God for the blessings. And we know from psychology that practicing gratitude is good for the mind. Studies coming out of the University of California shows that when we practice thanksgiving, it increases dopamine and serotonin in the brain. And these neurochemicals make us have a better mood, lead to us feeling happier. So in other words, when the Israelites offered their grain offering and their thanksgiving offering to God, the peace offering, they were actually engaging in practices that were good for their mental health.
I love that, Michael. Surely God knew what our souls needed long before psychology gave it a name. Psalm 50, verse 23 says, "Those who sacrifice thank offerings honor me." And that's what this offering was, an intentional act of worship. You're saying, God, I see what you've done. I'm grateful. Oh, that's a powerful way to live, Michael. You know, it's almost like God wired gratitude into the human design
Absolutely.
as an antidepressant
Yes.
for our soul. Let's talk about that a little bit more. You know that we live in a world that is really full of anxiety, fear, and comparison. So how does Thanksgiving help us overcome that?
Yes, that's so true. We tend to think of ourselves and compare ourselves to others and think about what we lack, and this increases our anxiety. And so gratitude is one of the most powerful tools against anxiety and depression. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who kept gratitude journals for just 10 weeks reported feeling 25% happier and more optimistic. So if you were to start practicing gratitude, keeping a journal of gratitude between now and Christmas, you could be 25% happier by the time Christmas comes along.
Impressive.
So they also experience better sleep as a result of keeping these gratitude journals. So if you're having problems with insomnia, start a gratitude journal. And so what the study showed is that just by practicing gratitude, thinking of 3 things that you feel happy about, you're giving thanks about before going to bed, that you have better sleep. It lowers the level of cortisol in your bloodstream and increases serotonin, helping you to regulate your emotions. So this mirrors the spiritual principle found in Philippians 4 verse 6 to 7, where it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God." So Thanksgiving is not just about good manners. It's a medicine for the mind.
I love that connection, Michael. So when Paul says, with thanksgiving, it's not just a spiritual suggestion. It's psychological wisdom. He's saying, don't let worry win. Let gratitude guide your thoughts. I love that so much. So let's move to another area, relationships. You've often said that gratitude can change the tone of a relationship. Tell us how so.
Gratitude is one of the most powerful relationship tools that we have. When you thank someone, it acknowledges that person's value. And research from the University of Georgia found that couples who express gratitude towards each other reported higher satisfaction, that they have stronger trust for each other, and that they have better conflict resolution. So gratitude, telling someone how grateful you are for them and the things that you're thankful for about them. It helps to soften criticism when you have to criticize them for something, and it increases empathy. So we know from Proverbs 16:24 that it says, "Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing the bones." So when we speak gratitude, we are literally speeding emotional healing.
Oh, I love that. Gratitude as belonging. So when we give thanks, we're not only honoring God, we're creating connection with Him and with one another. That's what makes gratitude so transformational. Wow, Michael. Wow. What a rich start to our Thanksgiving special.
Absolutely. So what I would encourage listeners to do this Thanksgiving is to don't just look at it as another Thanksgiving holiday, but look at it as a time when you can really focus and really be grateful. Don't just have the meal and the celebration, but focus on being thankful to God for what you have. And I would say implement rituals into your Thanksgiving meal that shows that you are thankful. Not just thankful for the meal, but thankful for even each other. Maybe you could have a ritual that we practice at our Thanksgiving where each person goes around the table and just tell of something that they're thankful for. And, thanking each other for just being who they are, finding things in each person that you can actually express gratitude for.
We've seen how gratitude was woven into worship in Leviticus and how it still rewires our minds today. So, Michael, you've often said that gratitude changes the way we see our story. How does Thanksgiving help people find meaning, especially after hardship?
That's such a vital question, Denise, and thank you for raising that, because what I find from reading scriptures and other literature is that gratitude helps us to reinterpret our experiences. Psychologist Robert Emmons described gratitude as a life orientation towards appreciation. And his studies show that grateful people are more likely to find purpose even in their suffering. When we practice gratitude, we aren't denying pain, we are reframing it. We start seeing even painful chapters as places where God was working behind the scenes. And in biblical terms, we see this in the life of Joseph, for example. He could have lived a bitter life after being betrayed by his brothers. But we read in Genesis 50 verse 20 that Joseph said to his brothers, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." Notice, Joseph was not saying that what happened to him wasn't evil. So practicing Thanksgiving is not burying your head in the sand and just pretending that everything is okay. What he's doing is he's reframing his story. He's giving his story purpose. And he said, despite my pain, despite being separated from my family, despite all the hardship that is involved in that word evil, God is bringing good. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And that's the psychology of gratitude. It takes what was meant for destruction and turns it into opportunities for growth and a testimony of God's goodness.
Great point, Michael. Gratitude changes how we remember the past. Psalm 103 verse 2 states, "Forget not all his benefits." Sometimes when we are going through hard times, we forget the blessings we have even in those dark times. It reminds me of Psalm 23. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for God is with me." We will be right back. You have been listening to the Live Transformation Show, where award-winning psychotherapist and author Michael Hart of Elim Counselling Services has been speaking on the topic, the power of Thanksgiving. You can find out more about us at ElimCounselingMinistry.com or by calling 613-699-1677 or 1-877-204-2914. Please consider making a tax receiptable donation through ElimMentalHealthFoundation.com. Your donations help us to stay on the air and to provide subsidized counseling to those who can't afford it. Let's now talk, Michael, about something we often overlook: how gratitude affects the body. I know psychology talks a lot about the mind-body connection.
Absolutely. Gratitude doesn't just lift the spirit, it strengthens the body. And studies show that there is a benefit that comes from regular practice in gratitude, that people who practice gratitude regularly, that they have lower blood pressure, stronger immune system, and better sleep. And one study even found that writing down 3 things you're thankful for before bed improves sleep quality and reduces insomnia. So spiritually, that makes sense. The Israelites' thank offering, the peace offering weren't rushed. These were part of festivals filled with music, dancing, and the community. And these acts of celebration released oxytocin and endorphins, the same chemicals that modern psychologists identify as mood stabilizers. So the ancient dancing and celebration and the festivals of the Old Testament that were associated with giving thanks to God for what he had blessed the Israelites with are great prescriptions for holistic wellness.
That's a great connection, Michael. So when scripture says a merry heart does good like medicine, which we find in Proverbs 17:22, it's not just poetic. It's literally true.
Absolutely. That's what the studies are showing, that it's actually a benefit to your health to practice gratitude. So I invite you this Thanksgiving to make your Thanksgiving celebration a lot more festive, a lot more rich than ever before. Include music, include celebration, even include dancing. I know that might affect some of my holier than thou Christians, but let me put this to you, that dancing is not sin. It's found in the Bible. So you can celebrate and you can worship God as part of your Thanksgiving ritual.
Exactly, Michael. More joy when you dance. That's great.
Absolutely.
So I think this last benefit may be one of the most needed ones in our time. Resilience. You know, so many people feel worn down by disappointment and stress. How does gratitude help us bounce back?
That's such a great question. Gratitude is one of the cornerstone of resilience. Trauma researchers have actually found that people who intentionally practice gratitude recover more quickly from loss or failure. So Dr. Martin Seligman, one of the founders of positive psychology, ran studies showing that writing a gratitude letter to someone you appreciate can have lasting positive effects for up to a month. Why? Because it rewires how we think about adversity. In scripture, we find the same thing, that resilience is modeled over and over again through thanksgiving and thankfulness. So Paul, for example, wrote letters of thanksgiving while in prison. David gave thanks in the wilderness. The Israelites, they sang songs of gratitude while marching through deserts. They weren't comfortable. Their feet were probably blistered. They didn't know where their next stop would be, what they would find around the next corner as they marched through the desert. They didn't know where the enemies would be coming from. But they sang songs of gratitude. So gratitude became their strength. It reminded them that God was still writing their story. And because of that, they were resilient and they had hope.
You know, as you speak, 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 18 comes to mind. Give thanks in all circumstances. It didn't say for all circumstances, but in them. Gratitude doesn't deny pain. It defies despair. You know, you've mentioned before that gratitude wasn't just a biblical principle, it's a human one. So, how have other cultures practiced Thanksgiving?
That's a fascinating question. Anthropologists have found that nearly every culture in history had rituals of Thanksgiving. There is something in the human psyche that says that there needs to be something bigger than us that blesses us with the abundance that we have in life, that provide for our daily needs. So they have found that every culture have some kind of Thanksgiving ritual. In ancient Egypt, they held harvest festivals to thank their gods for the Nile's abundance. Similarly, in many African societies, people still hold yam or harvest festival that are celebrated by the entire community, offering food, music, and dance as an expression of gratitude. And even among indigenous people of North America, gratitude ceremonies are still central. And they had these ceremonies long before the modern holiday of Thanksgiving came about. So it's as if there is something wired within us to be thankful to our Creator. It's found in every culture. So these practices all mirror the Levitical Thanksgiving offerings, the peace offerings, and the grain offerings that were offered as thanksgiving to God. So all of these offerings remind us that gratitude is wired into the human soul. It connects us not just to God, but to each other. So if you are denying that part of yourself by not being thankful, you are stifling, you are actually choking something that should be coming out of you naturally. And I think it's no wonder that so many people are depressed and anxious, because this natural part of their human existence is not being practiced. So culturally, psychologically, and spiritually, Thanksgiving makes us whole and healthy, and we should not lose sight of that.
That's a great point, Michael. I love how you have shown that gratitude runs deep across every culture. But for our listeners today, as we prepare for Thanksgiving, how can they make their celebration more than just a meal or a family tradition? How can they truly experience the spiritual and psychological benefits of giving thanks?
That's such a very important question, because I think, when it comes to holidays like the New Year's holiday, a lot of us are aware of the psychological significance of those holidays. So people will have rituals like they will make New Year's resolution. And studies show that when resolutions are made at that time of the year, people are more likely to keep those resolutions than at any other time during the year. And so there is something about the beginning of a new year that people tap into when they set these resolution. There is a psychological benefit. But what I think is that we're actually missing out on the psychological benefit of Thanksgiving, because we see it as just an opportunity for more turkey and more gravy instead of realizing that it's a powerful tool that can be used for our mental health. So here are some suggestions that I would suggest. First, make your gratitude intentional. Before the meal, take a few minutes to share something specific that you're grateful for. Not just the family or food, but something personal and meaningful. Perhaps a lesson learned, a challenge you have overcome, or a moment where you experience God's grace. When gratitude becomes specific, it becomes transformative. Second, I would say, make gratitude relational. Don't just give thanks to God. Also, thank the people around you. Tell someone at the table how they have blessed your life. When you express appreciation, it strengthens emotional bonds and remind others that they matter. Research in positive psychology shows that express gratitude improves relationship, boosts our moods, and reduces stress for both the person who is giving the gratitude and the person who is receiving it. Third, I would say make gratitude reflective. Before the day ends, take a quiet moment to thank God privately. Reflect on the year, the ups and the downs, and see where His faithfulness have showed up. Maybe this year has been a tough year. This Thanksgiving has been a tough time for you because maybe some loved one is no longer around. Maybe you have been through some hardship financially. Maybe you have gone through a relationship breakup. But think about the ways in which God has been faithful to you, the things you can still be thankful for, even in adversity. Denise earlier on talked about the scripture, yea, do I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me, from Psalm 23. Think about the ways God has been with you as you went through those challenges. So in Leviticus, the grain offering and the peace offering was communal and personal, and it was about saying, God, you have been good, and I recognize your hand in my life. So if we celebrate Thanksgiving this way, intentionally, relationally, and reflectively, it becomes more than just tradition. It becomes an act of worship that can renew our minds and our heart and lead us to better mental health.
That's so beautiful, Michael. I really love that. Intentional, relational, and reflective. What a perfect reminder that Thanksgiving is not just something we celebrate, it's something that changes us when we do it from the heart. So as we close today, I'm struck by how gratitude touches every part of who we are, mind, body, and spirit. It reduces anxiety, strengthens relationships, gives meaning, improves health, and builds resilience. It's so no wonder God commanded Israel to give thank offerings. It was an act of worship that healed the whole person. So be sure to tune in next Monday at 9:30 a.m. when we'll explore a timely and important topic, Haunted Minds, the psychology of Halloween. If you missed any part of today's show, you can find it on Elim Counselling YouTube channel. Please consider making a donation through elimmentalhealthfoundation.com. Until next time, I'm your co-host, Denise Hart.
And Michael Hart, praying together that you would have a wonderful Thanksgiving and that God would bless you in all your relationships and to keep you sound in mind and pure in heart.